In relation to what we're checking, so when someone is submitted for a working with children check, we look at criminal records as well as employer disciplinary findings, which essentially, for those who may have had experience with them, relevant employment proceedings under our current legislation. We'll talk about offences first. There is a listing on our website, just like the fact sheet you've got today, where at least Schedule 2 and Schedule 1 offences that are captured by the Working with Children check. And they are types of offences that have been identified through the Act as concerning in relation to a Working with Children check. Schedule 2 offence is serious types of offences, so serious sex and violence crime. If someone has a criminal record from a charge right through to a conviction for any of those types of offences that are listed under Schedule 2, they will automatically be barred when they apply for a Working with Children check. So there will be certain people, on a very rare occasion, but it may occur, that you will compel your existing volunteers and your new volunteers to go and get the Working with Children check, and they will come back with an automatic bar because they have a serious sex or violence charge right through to conviction, so any of those results anywhere in Australia. What we are looking at in the new system is a slightly larger or broadening of the offences that we capture. In the existing Working with Children check, we captured sex and violence offences against children and a serious sex offence against an adult. In the new system, we're looking at any type of violence or sexual offences. So it is a broadening of what we capture. Schedule 1 offence, through lack of a better term, is less serious offences. They are common assault, other types of things that don't meet the criteria of serious sex offence under our legislation. If someone has a charge of conviction for a Schedule 1 offence, they will go to risk assessment. So we'll actually look at patterns of behaviour, how many times has it occurred, how long ago did it occur, is it recent, what was the age of the victim, what was the age of the person when they committed that offence, what were the circumstances associated with that sort of behaviour. Those things will be placed into a risk assessment tool, and our staff will oversee that. We have specialist staff that are involved in the risk assessment process. We will either issue them with a clearance because we identify that there isn't significant enough risk associated with that person, so therefore they can work with children, or we might issue them with a bar, meaning that just like with automatic barring, they're excluded from working with children. So an automatic bar or an interim bar means that by law they can't work with children. Employer disciplinary findings is the new term, the new title for relevant employment proceeding. Essentially, we have a range of current relevant employment proceedings that were captured under our existing legislation over the course of the last 13 years. They have been vetted for procedural fairness and natural justice, and there's a range of those that will be coming across to the new database and the new system that we've adopted. The obligations for your reporting to the Commission in regard to people who might offend against children or harm children in an organisation will be handed down in the regulation, and it will give you guidance on whether you're obligated to report to us. In the existing Working with Children check, relevant employment proceedings did extend to volunteer organisations. And for any of your sectors or industries who may report to the Ombudsman under Part 3A of the Child Protection section of their legislation, you'll be required to continue to provide your employment disciplinary findings to us as well. But that information will be handed down when the regulation is completed. For the results of the check, we've made it a bit easier for organisations. In the existing check, we either gave you a clearance, we said they were prohibited from working with children, or we did an estimate of risk outcome and let you decide whether you'd engage them. In the new system, if they are clear, so they've been issued with a clearance, they can work with children. If they've been barred or they're under an interim bar, they are not allowed to work with children, you're not allowed to engage in a child-related role. So it takes the emphasis off your organisation. If for any reason the result comes back with a bar or interim bar, it means that you simply say to that applicant or that person, that volunteer, we can't engage you by law, we need you to go back to the Commission for Children and Young People and organise a dialogue with them. So it's not as though you have a decision to make. Commonly, sometimes people have said, don't worry about it, it's not something that is concerning, it was a long time ago, etc. And organisations will then ring us and say, should we employ them? Should we offer them a role working with children? And by law, we couldn't give that guidance. We had to just go off what was our generated report for the estimate of risk outcome. Any applicant that is issued with an automatic bar through the Schedule 2 or continuous monitoring, or has an interim bar through risk assessment, can appeal to the Minister's Decisions Tribunal in regard to the outcome of that. It needs to be a definitive outcome, so if they're under risk assessment, they need to wait till the risk assessment concludes, but they will be encouraged to go and have an appeal heard if they'd like to. The appeal process will either identify that someone has had their appeal upheld and it's successful, and therefore they'll be issued with a clearance, or they'll be told that their automatic bar or their bar stands, and therefore they won't be able to work with children. To prepare for the new system, we're going to require all organisations, both paid, volunteers, self-employed, tertiary organisations, etc., to ensure that they register with us. There'll be a new website that will go live in the coming weeks, On that website there'll be a registration process. It will be very, very quick. It'll only take about 2 minutes. You nominate your organisation, contact details, how you'd like us to contact you, who the person is you'd like us to talk to, and we will then provide to you a login and a password. And that login and password will give you access to the verification part of the website. So the registration is required. Even if you have an existing Working with Children Check ID number, some of you may, some of you may not, even if you're already registered with us, we will require you to re-register. Our new database requires all organisations to register. We want you to identify what are child ladder and what are non-child ladder roles. So talking about the scope of the check, what's direct face-to-face contact with children, what roles will be outside of the scope of the check. If for any reason you have concerns, have a look at the fact sheets that are applicable to your sector and industry. Do contact us, call us, email us, and we can clarify things for you. We are actively promoting you to be very proactive when you're looking at your recruitment processes. So it might be your website, your newsletter, you might recruit big numbers and go via one of the larger websites. You can put on there, if it's a child ladder position, we encourage you to say a Working with Children Check applies. Please ensure you go and get your number and provide your number to us before we engage you. So you can be very proactive. What I would do is put a link to our website that simply says if you don't know what the Working with Children Check is, or you need to apply for a Working with Children Check, please click on this website. Hyperlink takes them directly to our website. Our customer service details are there if they have any questions, rather than you trying to collate large amounts of information on behalf of your stakeholders. So promote them to go to our website, they get up-to-date information, they also get the customer service assistance from that website. We'll talk about record keeping in a second, but before I do, say we go live on the new system in a couple of weeks, and I'm representing my local volunteering organisation, and I've got my registration and my password, so I've got my login and password, and I want to verify 2 new volunteers who are going to be working directly with kids. I ask them for their name, their date of birth, and their Working with Children Check number. They provide it to me. I log into the website with my login and password, and as soon as I do, it comes up with a table on the screen. And the table will prompt you to put in name, date of birth, and Working with Children Check number. You can put up to 50 people in at one time, so it's not a one-in, one-out type process. You can pre-populate that table with 50 names, dates of births, and numbers. If you've collated them on an Excel database, you can copy and paste that sort of information across. Once you click the button to verify within that system, it will give you results. It will say whether they're clear, whether they're under current application, whether they're barred, intra-barred, or whether that person has not been found. Where it says current application, it means that they're very new to the system. We may not have finalised our processes yet, but we haven't identified a relevant record. So by law, they can work for you, but you do need to return to the system periodically, probably the next few days, because most of the criminal record checking processes aren't going to take a long time. It's envisaged, and we can only go off our guides with our testing, it's envisaged that it will be anywhere from 3 to 7 working days that people will get the results back. So in the existing Working with Children Check, sometimes those timeframes are a bit longer. In the new system, it shouldn't take too long if they don't have a relevant record, depending on whether they have a common date of birth, common surname, those sorts of things. If it says clearance, that's a definitive result. They're clear to work with children. You've met your obligations because you've got their information in the table and you've got your results of clearance. Barred, intra-barred or not found means that by law you can't offer them a volunteering role with the children or a paid role. They can't engage in a child-related position. Barred or intra-barred means that they've either been automatically barred or they're going through risk assessment or may have been barred, or through continuous monitoring they have an intra-bar. Not found means that we did some troubleshooting and we identified that sometimes people will misspell names, surnames and first names. They might get dates of birth wrong. Sometimes you might say to someone via your information package, can we have your Working with Children Check number, and they provide their Queensland number or their Victorian or Western Australian number. Our system must have 100% matching of name, date of birth and the number they provided to you. If it says not found, it means our system does not recognise them. It doesn't mean that they're barred, it doesn't mean that they're a risk, it just means we can't identify them in our system. We want them to come back to us. Obviously check your spelling of the names, check that you've entered the number correctly, date of birth correctly, but if it does say not found, compel them to contact us and we'll figure out what the issue is. They may not know that there's a Working with Children Check in New South Wales, they may have come from interstate, for example.